Hello everyone, I'm Janit Vijaysinha from the Sri Lanka Alumni chapter. So welcoming you all on behalf of my chapter. So before all, this is our third series of the inspirational talks firstly organized by the Indonesian chapter on 23rd March and second series organized by the Malaysian chapter on 6th August. So we are Sri Lanka chapter. Okay, right. So going on. So I hope everyone is doing well. So everyone was like stuck with the pandemic, and it was a very hard situation, challenging environment. But I hope everyone should do good, right? Okay. I welcome um, I welcome our president of the alumni chapter Sri Lanka, Mr. Lakmal Amuldenia, to give you a brief introduction about the chapter in Sri Lanka. Hello, Lakmal. Hi.
Hi, Janet. Good morning
Good
and good
morning.
afternoon to some others, and good day to almost everybody from the globe. As Janet was mentioned, so this is a brainchild of Curtin Indonesia chapter, Inspire Asia. This is the third installation that Sri Lanka is hosting, and I would like to thank all the chapter presidents, including Indonesia, Malaysia, Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore, for participating in this event and supporting with coordinating with your colleagues as speakers. So I would like to give you a little bit of introduction to Sri Lanka chapter. We have initiated Sri Lanka chapter in 2011. It's almost 10 years now from the inception, and it was honor of us to become alumni of Curtin University as a part of the global alumni. And we were doing a lot of events in the past, but actually the pandemic is what we brought us together. Now we have Curtin Alumni Asia, where all of these presidents have connected, and we are trying to do things for the future and looking forward to do enormous activities to upskill our own undergraduates, graduates, and support the networking of all the alumni in the Asia and the globe. And we are trying to get more benefits to alumni and their children in the going future. And thank you very much for Janit, Nisanka, and Sri Harindran, who have put enormous effort to bring this session together. And I believe this will be a huge success. And I invite all of you to be with us towards end of the session today. And you will hear from the wisdom of our own Curtin graduates who have graduated from several places of Curtin universities. I mean, from Malaysia, from the main campus at Perth and Singapore, and other institutes we are conducting Curtin alumni programs. So, thank you everyone for joining us today, and looking forward to continue this journey together with you all, and look forward to do more and more interesting events in the future. And now I
Okay.
would like to hand it over to Janit and our uh, Dean International from Sri Lanka, Curtin Colombo, will give you a small briefing of what we are up to these days. Thank
Yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you, Lakmal. So we have our Dean International, Professor Mahesha Kapuru. She's the Dean and Professor of ICT at Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology, SLATE. So we'll move on to the welcoming speech of her.
morning, everyone. With great pleasure, I welcome you all to the Curtin Alumni Asia Inspiring Talks, Reimagining Asia in the Post-Pandemic Future. I appreciate this idea of Curtin Alumni Asia Inspiring Talks. It creates a special bonding between the students who have passed out and who have established themselves already in the big outside world. And I would also like to praise the multiple roles played by you in the society. Many of you hold key positions of major influence in the society. Our alumni are working in engineering, computing, healthcare. There are world-famous artists, dancers, filmmakers, and scientists. There are also CEOs, attorneys, doctors, politicians, and there's even a renowned comedian and an Emmy Award winner. Many of you have dedicated your lives to service through various roles in your community. With a narrow window of opportunity to rethink our world after the pandemic, this forum is bringing together our alumni from around the region to share their ideas on generating positive change as the world recovers from COVID-19. So what's the biggest opportunity you see for positive change in the post-pandemic world? And what's your best piece of advice for how to make change happen? We all know pandemic has its own dark sides, but it has also created many opportunities for us. I personally feel that the opportunity for speed and innovation is one of the greatest openings. Most of our workplaces, companies suffer from procedures, slow procedures, complex administrations, and rigid hierarchies. Well, it does not make the organizational life very pleasant. But the pandemic has compelled many of them to break through these rigid systems and act swiftly. Suddenly, those inflexible procedures can be skipped or even accelerated. Rules can be sidetracked and decisions can be made more independently without formal approval. The pandemic shows that as soon as there's a strong enough stimulus, things can change. Well, this leads to remarkable innovation. I can give you some examples from Sri Lanka. During the pandemic, small shops, restaurants, and the like were severely affected by mobility restrictions and consumer fears. Not being allowed to open their doors, these businesses have shifted to delivery now. Even the shopkeepers in the village markets have adopted online delivery now. They had to figure out ways to get online and stay competitive. Many businesses pivoted their operations. They made fundamental shifts in business practices in response to the new opportunities they saw. The pandemic also overturned almost every aspect of university education at once. It was not just the move from lecture rooms to computer screens. Universities suddenly do much of the teaching, lab work, and examinations online. Graduations are held online, enrollments and inaugurations are held online. But all these are creating more access and mobility for students. Curtin Sri Lanka, where I work, also went through these challenging times. However, with the opportunity for speed and innovation, we managed to overcome many of the challenges. Within a week, we changed our academic delivery to online mode and managed to continue with the academic programs without any disruptions. It even allowed us to bring expertise from all around the world. It has given us a whole lot of new opportunities. But all these rapid changes to the education system test the basic ideas about teaching, schooling, attendance, testing, the role of technology, and the human connections that hold it all together. So there may be an opening to reimagine what universities will look like in the post-pandemic future. All this brings the opportunity to create innovations now that can be maintained after the crisis. And it also can help keep the current speed and innovation mode afterwards. This has the potential to lead to previously unseen innovations or ideas. Now, Let me tell you a little bit about the Curtin Sri Lanka partnership. 20 years ago, we were small, but an innovative higher education institution. It just comprised of a few hundred students. But today, we have produced over 1,000 alumni, and our graduates are widely spread, both nationally and internationally, in search for growth, learning, knowledge, and their performance make a positive difference everywhere. Our partnership with Curtin University has strengthened significantly during the past 2 decades. In March 2021, this year, we launched 8 fully franchised Curtin degree programs in Sri Lanka in the field of computing and engineering. Early next year, we'll be launching 3 new degree programs in business, and we plan to offer the master's degree programs in mid-2022. Curtin Sri Lanka, I'm proud to say, has now become one of the top-ranking institutes in the country. And to achieve the greatness, it has all the important prerequisites, such as the expansive campus, conducive environment for all-around growth, highly qualified and experienced faculty, dedicated students, necessary infrastructure, and resources. Well, getting back to the alumni network, you all are very valuable. And it's very valuable to you personally and also collectively as a group. Your alumni network is an immense network of professional contacts. By staying in touch with your network, you can build professional connections, invaluable advising, give back to your school, or simply maintain a connection with people who have successfully completed the same educational process that you have. So you already have one thing in common. That commonality can carry greater impact than you might expect. Now, I would like to thank the organizers for bringing these groups together and all others who have been supporting in the background. A big thank you to Andy, representing Curtin Alumni Indonesia, Helen, representing Curtin Alumni Japan, Abdul, representing Curtin Alumni Malaysia, Melvin, representing Curtin Alumni Singapore, and Chamila, representing Curtin Alumni Sri Lanka. And I also would like to thank Curtin Alumni Sri Lanka for organizing this wonderful event. Well, we need more events like this to bring together our diverse alumni network in the Asia-Pacific region, to give the chance to stay in contact and continue to learn from each other. So I wish you all the very best for today, and I'm confident it's going to be another big successful event. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Professor. Actually, we are unable to have a live today, so we had a recording, right? So then we actually are privileged and proud of to have a Curtin separate campus in Colombo, so which was recently open. So why don't we go and check on it, right?
SLIT International, now at Nava Mavata, Colombo. Complete a top-ranked, globally recognized engineering or computing degree. Right here in Sri Lanka. Offered by Curtin University, Australia. Visit www.slit.lk/Curtin. Curtin University, make your tomorrow better.
Okay, right. So next we have this time it's a bit different from the others. Right? We have 3 moderators, right? So I'll go through them, and first of all, I'll be moderating the first part. And I'm Janik Pujasing, as I introduced myself before. I'm a university associate at Curtin Sri Lanka and the assistant secretary of the Curtin Alumni Chapter Sri Lanka. So currently working as a teaching assistant to the Curtin offshore campus students at Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology, SLIT. and is an active researcher on renewable energies and energy optimization in the manufacturing industry. With international appearances, also, I'm a mentor in inspiring coding students at Slate. So then we have Nisanka. Hello, Nisanka. Yeah, there.
Hi
Hello,
all.
Nisanka. So he's a
Hello.
moderator, second moderator of our event today. So he's the head of customer success at FM Innovations Private Limited, assistant treasurer of Curtin Alumni Chapter Sri Lanka, and he's the head of customer success at FM Innovations, and he is also a finalist of Microsoft Imagine Cup Europea and Asia Pacific regions. Additionally, he is a passionate speaker and a mentor involved in educating the young in technology. So, next moderator, Harendra Sriharan. Hello. Yeah, we have Harendra here. Hi. He's a software engineer at WSO2 Executive and a committee member of Curtin Alumni Sri Lanka chapter. He also graduated uh, in Curtin University with Bachelor of Computing Software Engineering. Right. So then, thank you, Harendra and Nisanka. So next, why don't we go to the speakers? We have 5 speakers from Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, Singapore, and Sri Lanka. So we have Andy from Indonesia. Hello, Andy. Hello, how are you?
Hello, everyone. I'm fine. Thank you.
Uh, okay, so a bit brief introduction about Andy. So he's connecting from Indonesian chapter, Cortina Alumni. So his current position is the head of data and documentation subdivision in the Planning, Research and Development Agency of Surakarta local government. Director, he's also the director of research and strategic initiatives at CUACI, Curtin University Alumni Chapter Indonesia as well. And so he has worked in the local government for nearly 15 years. So also, more than that, he has a short film titled The Lone Wolf Next Door. During the production of this movie, he served as an executive producer and as well as his background on education. He has a bachelor's of laws from Sebelas Maret University, Indonesia, and LD holds a master's in Curtin University and an Indonesian university, basing a stream of urban and regional planning. Okay, Andy, over to you, and we'd like to see your insights on this. Right? Okay.
Thank you, Janet, for introducing me. Hi, everyone. I hope you are well and staying safe and healthy. I am thoroughly honored to be speaking at this forum. 3 months ago, the head of the National Agency for Combating Terrorism in Indonesia stated that terrorism activities during the COVID-19 pandemic were increasing through the internet. The content of radicalism and terrorism rose in this period, and such as suspicious financial transactions went up until about 101%, as well as crowdfunding activities in funding for terrorist movements. A study from the Sofan Center found that the support for terrorists by women in Asia, the Southeast Asian region, is increasing, and that this is the challenge that in the post-pandemic future, that terrorist activity on the internet is massively moving up. Related with the theme on solution to overcoming challenges, I will discuss about the urgency of social media regulation in the vortex of terrorism. Of course, I'm going to address this matter much in the Indonesian context. I will begin by telling you a story about my friend. This is my Seminari Mertoyudan High School classmate in 1995, and I'm in the third row. This is me, and beside me on the left is my friend Trianto. After 23 years without interacting, on Sunday morning, 11 February 2018, I received a shocking news in my WhatsApp group. Trianto Church was attacked by terrorists and he became one of the victims. I will play the video that was taken after the incident. Trianto and his son sat in the back seat near the church entrance. And when the terrorist named Suliono, 22 years old, carried out his action in front of the church, Trianto looked back and unexpectedly a sword slash hit his forehead. I'm sorry, I should back to my presentation again. And this is the Trianto's current photo until now. Physically, he still feels pain in his face, and psychologically, he is afraid to go out alone. I tell you this story to remind that acts of terrorism can happen to anyone. I prove it by myself that terrorism could be very close to our daily lives. The police categorized Suliono as lone wolf, which is a terrorist who is not a member of any terrorist organization. In the last 5 years, the lone wolf phenomenon in Indonesia has carried out many acts of terror. In the end of August 2016, Ivan Harmadi Asugian, who got radicalized from the internet, attacked Father Albert Pandiangan, who was delivering a sermon in the St. Joseph's Catholic Church Medan, by an axe because after his bomb had failed to explode. And a month before, Nur Rahman became a suicide bomber while riding a motorcycle at the Surakarta local Surakarta police office after provoking via social media to attack nearest police office. First, from those examples, I want to underline that the use of social media in the terrorism issue. Women stated that the internet-based media work effectively for terrorist propaganda, and radicalism, and also recruitment. We may still remember on March 2019 when Brenton Tarrant carried out his shooting of worshipper in Christchurch, New Zealand. The bloody terror resulted in 50 people died, and you can see the people who were the victims. They are citizens from Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Turkey, and also Jordan. The worst was when Brenton Tarrant had broadcasted his live action on Facebook for about 17 minutes, and the video was shared about 1.5 millions before finally being deleted by Facebook after 24 hours after the tragedy. Terrorism often justifies its action on behalf of certain backgrounds, such as racial or ideological grounds, as happened in the case of Brenton Tarrant in New Zealand, or in Aum Shinrikyo in Japan, the Tokyo gas sarin attack in 1995, or the religious basis that prevailed in the Easter bombings in Sri Lanka in 2019. And understanding the terrorism today is very diverse, and there is no standard consensus yet. Terrorism is considered to be an act that employs intimidation or actual violence to create widespread fear. This can lead to the destruction of strategic facilities as well as the environment and public resources, causing ideological, political, or and security interference. However, uh, in principle, there are three components of any action that can be categorized as an act of terrorism. The first one is there is an element of violence. The second, random casualties occur. And the third is fear of terror arises within the community for the sake of social and political change. The head of National Agency for Combating Terrorism in Indonesia expressly states that the embryo of terrorism is radicalism. Radicalism itself is an attitude or behavior that seeks a revolutionary and total change to match what is understood as truth through violence. People who have been radicalized usually have three characteristics. The first one is intolerance. It means that he or she is not respecting other or different beliefs. The second is fanatism regarding what he or she believes to be an absolute truth. And the third is exclusivity, uh, elevating himself or his group to be the most correct group. And the last one is revolutionary actions, accustomed to being violent. And uh, explicitly, explain the relationship between radicalism and terrorism into four stages. The first one, the first stage is pre-radicalization. It involves close relationships to personal background factors that lead to opportunities for an individual to be open to radical views before radicalization itself can take place. The second phase is conversion and identification. This phase of change in individual both in term, behavior, and identity. At this stage, the trigger factor and the chance factor appear to be dominant. The internet and social media is an opportunity factor that makes one enter radicalization. The third phase is beliefs and indoctrination. The stage when a person begins to accept a militant view of radicalization. And The last phase is action, which is when someone is ready to act, and this action is not only manifested by an attack or bright bombs, but can include planning, selecting targets, making bombs, or funding terrorism. As an opportunity for a factor in the stage of radicalization in the internet, including social media, is maximally utilized by terrorist group. Women note that there are three reasons why social media is ideal for this purpose. It is very popular among the target group, and social media is cost little, and it is very easy to use, and also it provides direct access to the target group, being a lot more personal than a general website. Social media has made the communication and distribution of terrorist propaganda so much easier. It is employed by around 98% of internet active terrorist group. One example on how social media is much effective in terms of international terrorism, we can see the data from the US State Department figures that at least 12,000 foreigners from 50 different countries joined the Islamic States of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, a few years ago. And seeing how effective social media is means for terrorism, what can we do? And there are three things that I think are important to do. The first one is integrally regulate social media and terrorism. According to the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, UNODC, there are 16 conventions or protocols as global legal frameworks to counter terrorism. However, there is no preventive measures have been initiated regarding social media. These legal frameworks are focusing on dealing with crimes after they have been committed rather than trying to prevent them in the first place. UNODC realizes that there is no national or international mechanism for addressing the use of the internet by terrorists because crime, terrorism, and social media are all regulated separately when in fact they are interconnected. What is happening in the international level is also reflected at the national level in Indonesia. In May 2018, an amendment to Act number 15 of 2003 of Anti-Terrorism Act was enacted in Indonesia, but to this date, this has not provided regulation of any preventive measures concerning terrorist use of social media. My just explanation confirms that both at national or international levels, no regulation explicitly regulates the use of social media for terrorism. This is, I think, the significant point that this is a gap that requires attention from policymakers, considering that terror acts using social media are still ongoing and occurs across national borders. For example, in 2020, two Indonesian women workers in Singapore were sentenced to 2 years in jail for being proven supporting Jamaah Ansarut Daulah, a terrorist group in Indonesia, by transferring around 1.3 million rupiahs. And both women did that after being radicalized online. There is an urgent need to prevent the use of social media as tool for terrorism. It is related with wide stress that the success of counterterrorism measures depends rely strongly on their preventive effects. And I think integrated regulation on social and the second one is to increase the role of local governments in combating terrorism. In Indonesia, combating terrorism is a domain of the central governments. There is no regulation pointing local government to take part in countering terrorism. Meanwhile, the region is the source of national-scale terror events. The suicide bombers came from remote areas and carried out acts of terror in Jakarta, in Bali, and so on. The regions have also been affected by terror incidents. That's why I think regions have a strategic role in combating terrorism. After the terrorist attacks in Paris 2015 in November, countries in Europe increased the role of local governments in the context of early detection of individuals who have the potential to commit extreme acts of violence. The role of local government is in Europe is limited to supervision and early detection. The involvement of local government in preventing terrorism will also have an impact on the use of social media for terrorism purpose. Local government programs and activity can be focused on increasing supervision in each community. And the last one, the third, is the importance of parental supervision in the use of social media by children. It is a popular saying that social media brings those far away closer together, and but it distances those who are close. Many people are drawn in social media to communicate with people in other cities or even countries than communicating with family members in their homes. Rashid and Nicola Benyaya is the example of obstruction of communication between parent and child due to the role of social media and terrorism. They live in Birmingham, England, and Rashid, who was a funny and generous child, but then turned into a lonely child in his room. Actually, Rashid communicated through social media with ISIS and then solidified his intention to fly to Syria and to fight with ISIS against Bashar al Assad. Rashid, 19 years old when at the time, was killed in fighting in Syria. Nicola regretted why she could not prevent Rashid from being connected to ISIS, which caused Nicola to lose Rashid forever. Moving on from his own life experience, finally, Nicola, together with parents who have the same story, founded Families for Life, a non-profit organization that focuses on the radicalization and support for families. This institute provides guidelines that can be accessed at familiesforlife.org.uk, and some of them are about knowing who children spend time on the internet and having conversation with children about what they see on TV and the internet, opening up a discussion room about children's views on this matter, on this issue. And the last one that is more important is the parental awareness needs to be increased to pay attention to children's behavior, especially when there is a significant change in their attitude. For examples, when children become more creative about their website they use or hide their phones and delete their messages. And I think
So,
I just have all my presentation, but what I have talked about can be read in the Journal of Indonesia Sustainable Development Planning, and it can be accessed at this QR code. And in addition, Janet, it can also be read in the book from CUACI. We create we write this book from many alumni, and which will be published around this month by Alex Media Computindo. Maybe that's
that's really
all
great.
I can
Yes.
say, Janet. And thank you. Back to you, Janet.
Thank you, Andy. That was a really good topic, and it is the first time we came across such a topic, and we are really grateful to you. And we hope we are waiting for your publishing, right? And also, Andy, we have one question from our social media, and that's from Hirantika Kotlavala. She mentions that doesn't Facebook have ways to identify terrorism related groups?
I'm sorry. I can.
Yeah,
Can you?
can you see in the banner? Doesn't Facebook have ways to identify terrorism?
Yeah. Uh, I think Facebook, Twitter, and other social media has a commitment to against this issue on terrorism. When Telegram, when Indonesian government banned them, and they directly change their policy to make interference of Indonesian government to that we can access the Telegram, because we know that Telegram is very private, secure social media that even used for the terrorist group to make a tutorial to make a bomb. I think Facebook is also has commitment, but in the case of Brendan Taran, we can see that they are they lost many times. Then Facebook can share the live action of Brendan Taran, and we unfortunately that was did. And I think in the future, the cooperation between the government and also the company, social media company, to make a commitment, agreement on how we against the terrorism issue together.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Andy. So actually, we all know that we are living in an era of social media, right? And so the freedom has been one of kind of a threat here,
Issue, yeah.
right? So that is actually a threat that is being unknown and which has been randomized. So Andy, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your inspirational talks. So now I to hand over the moderation part to Nisanka. Okay, to continue. Okay, right, Nisanka, over to you. Nisanka, hello. I think you are muted, Nisanka.
Unfortunately, yes, I was
Okay.
muted. So, yeah, good morning to all. I think it's a wonderful day. We are packed with really great speakers who are willing to share their life experiences with us all. So, these speakers, as you all know, come from diverse backgrounds from energy, banking, government affairs, etc. So, next up, we have a very interesting speaker, Helen. So Helen, good morning.
Good morning,
Just a
Alex.
just a small introduction about Helen. So, as you might know, a lot of us we are so passionate about environment, climate change, data science, and space, right? But very few of us really take it up and go into that field to achieve something there. But Helen has already done that. Helen is a junior researcher in the NTT Space Environment and Energy Laboratories located in Tokyo, Japan. She also has a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Arts from Curtin University in year 2016. And she received honors from Australian National University and obtained her master's in engineering from Osaka University in 2019. So she joined NTT as a new graduate in 2020 and now works as a member of the Resilient Environment Adaptation Project. Her research interests include sustainability in the global food system, climate modeling, and big data analysis. So Helen is doing a lot to make the world a better place. So let's hear it from Helen. Over to you.
Hello, thank you very much for your introduction, Nishanka, and I'll just share my screen. Okay, perfect. So thank you everyone for attending the alumni talks today. The topic of my talk today will be realizing a sustainable future for all, time-dependent modeling of the environmental impact of food consumption for climate change adaptation. Before entering the main topic of my talk, I would like to briefly introduce myself and how I came to work as a researcher in Japan. Back in high school, I loved both science and the arts, and I didn't want to choose between them at university. At the time, I found that Curtin offered a science arts double degree in which you could obtain 2 bachelor's degrees in 4 years instead of the regular 3-year bachelor program. I thought this was a great idea, and I applied, and in doing so, I became the first student to study the degree with majors in physics and Japanese. People would often comment on what an unusual combination of subjects this is, and they would ask me what kind of career I was aiming for. But at the time, I just replied saying that I loved the 2 subjects and I wanted to pursue them as far as I could. Looking back now, I guess this is where my journey to Japan started. After completing the double degree program at Curtin, I decided I wanted to continue my studies of physics in more depth. So I moved to Canberra, where I completed a 1-year honours program at the Australian National University. I loved doing research and the challenging nature of the physics course, but I felt like something was missing as I had very few opportunities to use my Japanese language skills. This is when I decided to apply to the Japanese embassy in Canberra for a scholarship to undertake postgraduate studies at a Japanese university. I was accepted into the master's program at Osaka University, and after completing a 2-year master's course in materials science and engineering, I decided to look for a job, and I was hired by NTT Laboratories into the new graduate program. For those of you who haven't heard of NTT, I will briefly introduce it. NTT stands for Nippon Telegraph and Telephone Corporation. NTT is the 5th largest company in Japan by total revenue and the 2nd largest in terms of profits and total employee number. It was originally established in 1952 by the Japanese government to manage national telecommunications infrastructure, but has expanded since then to undertake business in a wide range of fields in over 80 countries. NTT invests an average of $3.6 billion into research and development annually and employs over 5,000 research professionals. The research laboratories at NTT are broken into 4 main groups, as shown here. My laboratory, the Space, Environment and Energy Laboratory, is part of the Information Network Technology Group and was recently established last July. The theme of this event today is Solutions to Overcome Challenges. Our lab was established to research solutions to one of the biggest challenges facing humanity today, climate change. Here, I'm showing a picture of 2 possible futures for our planet. On the left, a future in which climate change causes irreversible environmental degradation and disasters, and on the right, a future in which humanity works with nature rather than against it, and we find solutions to our global problems while regenerating the global environment. The main goal of our lab is to help reach the second future by developing technologies to contribute to Earth's environmental regeneration and a sustainable and inclusive society. Specifically, next-generation energy technologies and technologies that enable resilient environmental adaptation. Our lab is broken into two projects with 3 research groups each. The Zero Environmental Impact Research Project focuses on next-generation energy technologies, including nuclear fusion and space solar power generation, and energy network technology, which aims to enable the local production and consumption of renewable energy. With current technology, even renewable energy has some level of carbon emissions along their life cycle. Therefore, we are also looking at carbon conversion technologies through chemical and biological methods. The Sustainable Systems Group is working on this project. Shown on the right, the Resilient Environmental Adaptation Research Project focuses on technologies to help our society adapt to the changes that we are already facing due to climate change. Currently, we have already reached a global warming level of 1 degree above pre-industrial levels. The latest IPCC report has stated that climate change is already affecting many weather and climate extremes across the globe, such as heat waves, heavy precipitation, droughts, and tropical cyclones. And I'm sure we have all seen this in our individual experiences as well. And so developing these kind of technologies now is more important than ever. The ESG, or Environment, Social and Corporate Governance group, focuses on modeling and forecasting the future value of companies in terms of their contribution to society and the global environment beyond their financial value. The Global Environmental Futures Forecasting Technology Group, which I am a part of, looks at simulations for Earth's regeneration, the environmental impact of human activities on Earth, as well as climate and weather forecasting. I would like to introduce my research topic through the core concept of our laboratory, Reimagining Earth's future through space. Many technological concepts required for living in space can be applied to sustainability on Earth. If we can realize closed resource loops, flexible and highly localized production and consumption, and synchronized supply and demand on Earth, it would significantly contribute to global sustainability. When we consider long-term sustainability on Earth, we should consider the most basic human needs as a priority. These needs include warmth, food, and water. Among these, I have found food highly interesting, as it is the most complex of these basic needs and is highly affected by individual preference and culture. Let's have a look at the food system on Earth. The food system on Earth is highly resource intensive. 43% of the world's ice and desert-free land is used for global food production. On top of this, 34% of human greenhouse gas emissions come from the food system, and an estimated 2/3 of freshwater withdrawals are used for irrigation. Despite this resource-intensive production, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Association estimates that 1/3 of food produced for human consumption is wasted. Furthermore, the risks facing the global food system are increasing with time. To adapt effectively to climate change as a society, we must keep resource use and environmental impact of global food production within one Earth planetary boundaries. These are some of the risks that are facing the food system today. First of all, the annual population is increasing by 81 million people annually. A global shift towards Western diets containing more meat, particularly in developing countries, is also increasing the resources required to respond to global food demand. Finally, societal shocks and disasters, such as pandemics, wildfires, and typhoons, are set to increase as planetary resources are placed under more and more strain. These three factors all pose a threat to global food security. Among these heightening risks facing the food system, there is a problem. It is very difficult for us to quantify and track and predict food consumption habits in real time. This is due to a lack of high-resolution data. If we can visualize the state of the food system and its environmental impact in real time, we will be able to formulate more effective climate change adaptation strategies. Due to time constraints, I cannot share the details of my method today, but I would like to share the output image of my research with you. A recent study published by Oxford University in 2018 quantified the environmental impact of food using 5 indicators: greenhouse gas emissions, land use, water use, eutrophication, and acidifying emissions. These environmental impact indicators can be used to calculate the total environmental impact of food consumption, as shown here. We can break down this environmental impact into constituent food groups and then identify areas with high environmental impact. As food consumption habits differ for every country and region according to cultural and environmental factors, according to the country, areas of higher impact may differ. Furthermore, if we consider limitations to resources on a local scale, a food product suitable for production in Japan, with relatively plentiful water and limited land, may not be the same as a product suited for sustainable production in a country like Australia, with limited water but more land resources. Although most countries do not include food consumption or the food system in environmental impact reduction targets, I believe that this kind of study will be the way of the future for achieving a sustainable net zero environmental impact society. This approach can be used to create targeted and regionally appropriate policies, as well as assist in the creation of sustainable meal services to contribute to achieving zero environmental impact reduction targets and environmental regeneration. I would like to conclude my talk with some food for thought. The future of our health, not just the future of our health, but the health of our planet, is in our food. Thank you for your attention. And as a final note, as a new institution, we are looking for researchers and engineers to help us find solutions to pressing worldwide issues. You can also find out more about the research initiatives at NTT through the NTT R&D Forum, which will be held online in the 3rd week of November. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot for that very insightful speech, Helen. There are a few questions coming from the audience.
Great.
So how would reforestation impact reversing of climate change, or at least will it pause it for a bit?
Okay, that's a very good question, and that's actually very topical at the moment. So reforestation of, like, say, vacant agricultural land can be a major solution for climate change. And this isn't just because trees and plants can sequester carbon, but plants can also act as a vector to sequester, or you can say fix, carbon in the soil. So if you think about fossil fuels, they're actually carbon that has come from the soil and has been fossilized for thousands and thousands of years. So to reverse climate change, we can actually take the carbon from the atmosphere and put it back in the soil. So reforestation is a very powerful solution to do that.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that very insightful speech again, Helen. It was wonderful to hear from you, and we sincerely hope you'll make a really good contribution to the world and make us proud at Curtin.
Thank you very much.
So our next speaker is Abdul. Hello, good morning, Abdul.
Hi, morning.
So Abdul is a leader in the area of finance and banking. Abdul has rose through the ranks at DBS Bank, and prior to working at DBS Bank, he has worked at other major global brands such as HSBC and Citibank. So Abdul is currently the group head of digital ecosystems at partnerships for the Institutional Banking Group, one of the biggest banks in the Southeast Asia region. And Abdul is also the CEO of DBS Bank Malaysia. In the group role, he leads the strategy and delivery of the DBS digital embedded solutions with large corporates and platforms to offer banking service of the DBS to the customers and partner platform customers. Rauf also holds a Bachelor of Commerce in Information Systems from Curtin University, Western Australia, and an MBA from University of Leicester, United Kingdom. So through Rauf's speech and through Rauf's role as a leader in banking, we expect he has learned a lot of lessons, and we expect that he'll be sharing all those lessons with you, the alumni and the students. So over to you, Rauf.
Thank you, Nisanka. First, I would like to thank everyone, the alumni, and I know there's quite a few number of you involved. It's a great chance and opportunity for me to reacquaint back with Curtin in a big way, and getting involved with the rest of the people here. So let me just get into my topic. In terms of reimagining Asia in the post-pandemic future, and we're thinking through the theme of solutions to overcoming challenges. And I was going through a number of things, and I run a bank, so a lot of my inputs here is based on a lot of the customers that I've spoken to across the region, actually. So even though I have a responsibility for the DBS Malaysia as a country, but I also have responsibility for some of the ecosystem, digital ecosystems where we embed ourselves in clients' platforms across the region. So I've got a lot of these inputs which I've gathered in the last few years, particularly in the face of going through this pandemic and everything. So I wanted to highlight a few things. So this is a broad subject is what, but I wanted to make this theme specifically around trying to run a business. Okay. So a few things. One, I think we wanted to sort of analyze the situation we are in today, right? Few things. One, we realize there's so much of government stimulus, right? There's government fiscal stimulus that has been put out in some of these countries in terms of money that has been coming out from the governments to the people, and has been going into corporations, SMEs, individuals, in various forms, in through banks or non-banks, or even direct physical cash delivery. There's so many aspects of it. The reality of that, these are money in the billions, which means there's a lot of inflow and liquidity pumped into the country for the country to sort of generate the type of activity it needs to, and to survive through the pandemic, because a lot of them not able to obviously operate in the full capacity. But what that means is also a pent-up consumer spending. I mean, we have seen this now fueled by unprecedented levels of consumer savings. We have never seen individuals save this much money throughout the years, right? In the last 2 years, we've seen people save a lot more. There's less holidays, there's less shopping. Maybe people had ordered more food during this period, but otherwise, generally, we have seen a good amount of savings. And that's why you would have seen a lot of the banks across the region actually have probably shown some really good numbers because the money stays with the banks. And I think what is also interesting here is just to analyze a little bit on the situation. The impact of the pandemic hasn't been very symmetrical, right? So you've seen travel, retail, hospitality, live entertainment took a major hit, right? It's very clear. Day one, from the times it started of the cases, the lockdowns and the various SOPs that were put in place to manage the lockdowns severely hit. But at the same time, healthcare, life sciences, and tech has had turbocharged a lot of the aspects of the business. So you have seen different pieces come out in different angles. I mean, in the recent 2 years, I think people have learned a lot more about healthcare than they ever knew, and in terms of knowledge and understanding around the subject. So quite a few things. So that's the current situation. So we have people with enough money in the system. That doesn't mean everybody in the country has got enough money to spend. Of course, it doesn't solve a social problem that way. But however, there's enough liquidity in the system. There's, like I told you, there's more spent, which is waiting to be spent. And I think we have situations in various industries which have done really, really well. So what does this mean? So let me put it back into a context of a business. Unfortunately, folks, I don't have slides for you, so you got to listen to me. So in terms of how the business responds to the situation. So what does most companies do? And I'm not necessarily concerned whether it's a big or small. It is the same thing. I've dealt with governments and I've dealt with small mom and pop shops selling even cupcakes. The issue is the same, right? Controlling cost is the first thing that comes to mind for everyone. What's the other thing that you would do? The other thing you would do is look at your portfolio of business. And if you're a type of business which is serving different categories of people or different groups of people, you want to immediately understand and look into what are the areas that you want to sort of review and maybe not do for that period. Why? Why again would you select to just narrow it down? Because you want to preserve the cash. Again, the same thing. All people were really concerned about, at least in the first 6 months of the pandemic situation, was to really figure out about how I'm going to continue to run the business. And don't forget, we also went through a phase that this will not be too long an issue. The whole of early parts of 2021, it was a 3 month, 6 month, 9 month, it was a moving goalpost. But we have seen people continue to review as they got longer and longer into the journey. More and more of the business portfolio was reviewed to see how much more narrow and steady they can get just to sustain the business. Now what it is, now we have now almost 2 years in, we are now starting to see companies, large and small, looking back into the business models and trying to see how they're going to turn around going forward. So if those people who have sustained their businesses till now, chances are they will sustain quite well going forward. But they have also been the ones thinking through how they're going to turn around this whole coming out of this pandemic and how they potentially going to look into this thing. So overcoming challenges. I think it's an opportunity for a lot of the businesses to reframe and realize their potential. Sometimes you get very comfortable with what you do. And obviously, this is all common sense. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible to understand this. We get comfortable with what we do, and we think we're doing a great business, and we want to sort of replicate that and expand. That's a general mentality for everyone. But I think now is an opportunity to rethink in terms of, is that the right model even? We have seen companies who have gone big and expanded, may not necessarily been successful. And in this pandemic situation, some of them really been struggling, right? If you take construction businesses and real estate and construction businesses have really struggled, right? I mean, some markets they've been successful. They've done some beautiful properties. They want to take it to different markets, but different markets have different situations in this environment. And there are repercussions for that because they put capital into various other locations to run certain projects, and these things stall, money is stuck. Companies at the home location get into a very difficult situation trying to sustain themselves. So there are various scenarios we can go through. But the reality is we've got to think, how do we reframe our businesses going forward? The other thing is also in overcoming challenge, I think it's, when I mentioned earlier, we should reframe, it is also to constantly check if the value proposition, the original value proposition which was put in place, is it still intact? Or is it morphed into something that it is a little different now, but you still sustain through it and you live through it, and it works for the company. But is that continuously the way it's going to be? Is the value proposition that is morphed into something worth continuing? That requires a tremendous amount of study, even for a simple business, because you want to know how the environment is going to change, the people's behavior, buying behavior is going to change, and the people that you're dealing with to run your business is going to change. So the value proposition being intact is something to evaluate. So with that, I would want to highlight 5 specific areas which I think is critical to try to understand the way we will take this forward. One, and I'm saying this because and I picked 5, and maybe the 5. And I was thinking to myself, the 5 items I'm going to highlight, maybe it could have been 3. But let me try to articulate this for you, and then we can take a decision on whether it's a 5 or 3 items. Now, the 5 that I had in mind, one was resiliency. Second thing is about supply chains. The third thing is about our relationship with Southeast Asia or South Asia in general, ASEAN. Fourth is around automation. And 5 is about new regulations. I think these are some of the 5 things we need to be aware of take note in terms of how we want to look into them and address them in going forward running the business. Resiliency is again probably the primary one, and I start off with that because one of the things we have to get, the companies which have been resilient throughout this entire journey are the ones who have survived. And to a large extent, when you see the countries who have been really smooth and the countries have done really, really well in this environment, of course, if you take the healthcare and the vaccine situation aside, but if you look at generally other business models, people who have had an opportunity to transform digitally have done really, very well, right? So digital transformation is something that I've seen really make companies who have embarked on digital transformation have actually made really good progress during this period. Not just to grow their business, but to even survive and operate as a business among people and teams has been really, really useful. And I think we all experienced that because the moment we got into this situation, we all got into Zoom, StreamYards, and all these tools. So if we have not done that digital transformation before, we would have struggled. Now, of course, this is a very simple example, but in a real business environment, if you're domestic and international, this is an even bigger concern in terms of how you deal with global counterparties. So the operating model, I think that's very important. The way you operate today, is it going to be the way you're going to operate tomorrow? In terms of how you connect with counterparties, how do you deal with different countries, different time zones, and the type of products and services that you're going to support. Is that going to be the right operating model going forward? That's something we question about. People and culture, again, this is always a subject for every organization. But in current environment, how are we going to operate? The work from home, work from office, the 50-50s, and all these different kind of structures that we have. At some point, as we recover from all of these, we'll need to take a call on how we're going to run these things. And I think we need to find a balance in terms of, really addressing the concerns around people's time and effort they want to put into working and supporting the business and families. This has always been something that we always talk to employees in previous years, but in the current environment, it's become a serious issue because people have actually got acquainted and used to working from home and this environment. And this going forward will be a model which is going to be quite hard to change, and we'll need to address that. So the resiliency model, I think, is really, really important. The second thing is supply chains. Now, supply chains, again, one of the biggest issues that we have is how do you connect for your supplies around the world and or even in the region. And is that link that you have for people who are supplying to, even domestically, if you have certain suppliers who are supplying certain things for you to run your product or service, even if you're making bread, you need flour, sugar, oil, whatever it is that you need, that supply chain, is that resilient enough? And that's why I was saying whether it's 3 or 5 kind of categories. Is that something we need to relook at? And absolutely, my answer is absolutely, because I think we have seen a lot of corporations, particularly who lack the transformation exercise, who are not so digital, really struggled with this problem because they are very comfortable with supply chains that they have in place for certain markets, for certain products, which was so comfortable that they really struggled when the other geographies had problems. Supplies were limited. The logistics aspect of it also had its own challenges. So this all needs to be looked at. But with supply chain comes a few things. Besides just looking for alternatives and reliable sources of suppliers or customers even, cost structures is another one. When you try to change supply chain, there's a big element of change in terms of cost too. The cost of operating with one counterparty and then later on turning it into another counterparty, there's always a switching cost involved because that's not cheap either. That's something to think about. The other thing which has been, you would have read, I think a lot of you would have read in the last 2 years more than before, is M&A, mergers and acquisitions. We have seen, and you've seen this a lot more with the platform companies. They have seen large marketplaces buying wallet companies buying marketplaces, e-commerce companies merging with each other. So we have seen all these ecosystems of players actually come together. This is what we call partnerships and acquisitions. One of the things is with supply chains is getting partners and acquisitions together is going to be absolutely critical going forward. You cannot do everything on your own. I think this pandemic has taught us one thing. You can't build your own shop with all the services. You have to partner. You have to get the best value out of people in terms of their core competencies and see how you can leverage that in terms of building your own services. So that you will see going forward, it's something that is coming along. Now, of course, many will think, and I know a lot of people tell me that since I'm a banker, a lot of people ask me, oh, but isn't this because people are just trying to make big money because the valuations of all these platform companies are really high, or by merging and acquiring and sharing data, and do we get different levels of valuation and people just get richer? That's not the case. That could be case to some extent because people want the companies to do well and get good valuations. But don't forget, at the end of the day, all of these companies, when they come together, they're actually trying to provide a better services to the consumer. The consumer is the ultimate beneficiary in terms of getting the services, right? So that's, I think, very good from a supply chain standpoint. The other piece is relook at ASEAN, the third thing. ASEAN and South Asia, if you have counterparties in different parts of the western side of Europe or US or the Europe, their level of interactions in terms of understanding your domestic problems, your pandemic situation, and going forward, and your restrictions that you're going to have, is a little harder, and that's something we have seen. But where within the ASEAN, however, people understand the situation with you would have within the region a lot better. We've seen that because we've seen clients actually shift some of the supply chains to locations closer and counterparties who they can rely with closer, or at least starting to build them up right now to make good progress. I'm not saying ASEAN is the only way to go, but it's an area to start looking at a lot more deeply, because it also allows you to create new markets. Now, the fourth part I wanted to bring up was automation. The automation is, we always talked about, how things can be automated. Every company, if they have a chance to get something automated, they can. In fact, in a lot of organizations, automation, when it comes to investments, money goes into products and services automation where the return is very, very clear. That's always been the traditional way. That's where the reality is. They always say return, the return for the best buck. Where do you get that from? For every $1, where do I get the best return? Obviously, you put that in growth areas, new products and services, and bringing it to clients. So things in the background, when it comes down to supporting in the background, where automation is required, didn't really take much priority. That was the reality of the matter, right? If the finance departments or the inventory department or operations wanted some money or technology to do certain level of work, I never got the priority then compared to the guys in the front line. But today, it's a very different environment. A lot of the investments actually went into the back offices because they had to get the shops together, because they had to get some level of digitalization going to actually survive and operate. So I think automation was really, really important. The other thing is also in terms of automation, it's just not about getting your company automated, but it's also around how you deliver your services to the customer. And I'm not talking about delivering goods which you bought online. I'm just talking about actual products and services online, deliver it online, deliver it through physically. But you got to make sure that the automation exercise and getting information and how you support that is in a fully automated fashion with partners as well. Same thing. Now, the last piece I wanted to leave with you was regulations. This is, most corporations are not regulated. Financial institutions are. But today, I think we're starting to see different organizations around the world, different consortiums around the world for different industries, different sectors and different industries, coming together to define certain standards. You may not necessarily call that regulations, particularly in sustainability and green area. There's the people in the rubber world, people in the palm oil world, people in the coffee world. They are coming up to see how they can come up with sustainability standards. They're not regulations, but they're standards. But then, having said that, there are, as you go and bring some of that activity into the digital world in terms of moving towards technology, I think we're going to start seeing some of the regulations come on board. And the regulations will be kept at a certain industry and having certain provision of what you can and cannot do, which could ultimately impact your business. So this is a thing. You have a business that is running today. You've seen the economic situation right now, how it's been fueling it. Countries are starting to come out of this phase positively as the vaccination and everything goes up and it starts opening it up. You have a business, if you have a business till today already running and sort of sustained this far, you have to look into the turns. And I think I've given you the 5 areas, which I think are some things that businesses should be putting a bit more extra focus to see how you face the new future going forward. And the regulations and all the stuff that kicks in will be something you need to address to make sure that you continue to be resilient and to continue to run business and create new opportunities and new marketplaces for yourselves. So, Nisaka, I think that's all I had to say. I can leave that to questions from now if you want.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that insightful speech, Abdul. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people have a lot of questions, especially regarding the finance area, because it impacts us a lot, right? It impacts everyone, basically. So I have a personal question from you. So what do you think now, due to the supply chain constraints, there's a rising level of inflation around the world, right? So what do you think will this lead us into hyperinflationary era, or will this have any impact on the equity markets, etc.? What is your take on it, basically?
Okay. Nisanka, that'll be quite a long response actually to answer that question. But I'll tell you though, inflationary concerns are there. I think we will definitely see some levels of inflation coming about in the shorter term. But I think the inflationary measures will be quite varied. I think some will have a longer term aspect, some will have a short term aspect. So I'm going to give you a more generic answer around this. But the reality is this: for individuals, I think you want to really think through the type and risks that you want to take, because not all kind of assets that you have, whether it's physical cash or in the form of properties or in the form of equities, the different type of portfolios will have different kind of inflationary concerns. They're not going to be consistent across the board. It's going to be quite different. And the reason for that, I'm saying, is because this, the way the governments have taken some views around how they want to support the SMEs and the individuals and some of the larger corporations and so on, so supporting all of these, has been quite different across the domains. And so you will see different parts of it. I think the equity market's a big question mark for me in terms of short and longer term. It's going to come down really to a lot of these companies in terms of how, like I mentioned earlier, how they reframe and restructure their business going forward. So that's a bit of a question mark. But I think in terms of domestic real estate, I mean, if you're talking into assets which you have in real estate or something like that, that I think is a closer watch. In my view, the fact that there's a lot of spend ready to be spent, I think we have a lot of real estate companies who have got plenty of properties which they have not launched. The reason why they're not launching it is because they just want to finish off what's already in the market. If you notice today, in almost every country in the region, you will see lots of rebates and discounts being given for assets which are already available to be sold. But I'm pretty sure that the next set of real estate that you're going to see next year being launched would be at a different price premium, because the price of construction, the price of materials have all increased in a big way because of supply chain constraints and actual physical production, right? So I think we will see different angles of how inflation is going to impact us in different areas.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that very explanatory answer, Abdul. And we have one more question from the audience. That is, hi, Abdul. How does lockdowns impact banks? Okay, good question. We thought, and our honest answer is this: when we got into this whole pandemic situation, banks were really concerned. And in fact, if you looked at the 2020 numbers, and I'm not going to say this for the sake of DBS or try to represent DBS numbers, but in general for banking, right? The 2020 first half of the year wasn't very exciting, because why? Banks depend on interest rates, and interest rates went down, right? So when interest rates go down, the margin compresses for the banks, right? So which means you don't make the kind of money you thought you were going to make, all this took us by a bit of a surprise. So the way banks managed the liquidity and funds across the portfolio had some impact. However, when things stabilized, at least we knew how when the rates got to a little bottom low fairly quickly, right? It didn't take forever. It didn't take too long for rates to come down. Rates came down within the 3 to 6 months of 2020. So things got stabilized. But what we also realized is money stays with the banks. To mention earlier, people were spending less. People were not investing. Nobody's buying companies. So all the money stays in the bank. Because the money stays in the banks were solid. So banks actually, if you look at the financials in Malaysia or in Singapore, or even in many parts of the region, you look at your reports, banks generally have done very, very well. And I think that's one thing. What I think banks are very proud of is also bank has been an intermediary in all the businesses. Okay? Banks are always an intermediary in all the businesses. Every company you do, you need a bank to help move the money for you and manage your money for you and stuff like that. So I think what we are very proud of as banks in the pandemic is that it's given us a chance to actually help with all these disbursements. Government had to disburse billions of dollars to everybody.
Other banks are the ones doing it. And I think there was been actually a very exciting time for us to even get ourselves moving faster with transformation and all that.
Thank you for that, Abdul. So I wish sincerely all the best for you and all the work that you've been doing, and I wish that you'll make the Curtin community proud in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. So next up, I'd like to hand over the moderation to Hari. Hari, the stage is yours.
Yeah, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Okay, hello again, everyone. So I think we are having a great time, and we are getting so much of knowledge in diverse domains, right? So yeah, with that, let's go through the other speaker as well. So we have got Melvin Go from Singapore. So before starting the session, let me give a brief introduction about Melvin Go. So currently he is a senior lecturer in operations and marketing management, and also an associate dean of the Amity Global Institute, Singapore. Melvin, who obtained his MBA and Bachelor of Business from Curtin University, he is an active wine marketing and operations management practitioner with 30 years of brand, retail, wine marketing, and merchandising experiences with large organizations like Dairy Farm International and Duty Free Singapore. So, hi, Melvin.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. Yeah. So, you're ready for the session?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Let me just share my screen. Yeah.
Sure.
Sorry, let me just go to my sharing screen again. Stop sharing. Sorry for the difficulty in sharing my screen. I seem to not see it. Oh, Windows. Okay. All right. So sorry. Yeah. Okay. So for my presentation, I will be doing this narrated PowerPoint.
Hey, Melvin, the PowerPoint is not audible for.
Sorry?
It's not audible.
It's not audible, is it? Okay. Share with audio, huh? Share with audio, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I'll be sharing with the audio now. Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should I open it bigger, the presentation?
Yeah, that would work. Yeah.
Yeah, that will be good. Are you able to hear the...
I think like I have a copy of this. Shall I share my screen? I think.
Yeah. The copy was sent to you. Yes.
Yeah.
The copy was sent to you. Yes, that's right. Yes. Okay. Are you able to see the presentation?
Let me share it again. I think we're not
Yes,
getting
sure.
the audio.
Sure.
Welcome members of Curtin Alumni and friends. I'm Melvin Goh from Singapore, giving you a talk on challenges to a diverse, inclusive and future classroom. I'm currently teaching 18 to 23 years old students in business studies, undergraduate and postgraduate programs. My students are from India, China, Indonesia, Vietnam, Myanmar and other countries. My class environment is diverse with multiracial and multicultural students. The need to consider various multiple intelligence, learning styles, special needs, expectations, and the degree of English language proficiency in my classroom is a daily affair. Many of these students come to Singapore to embark on a higher education. They hope to attain a business degree certification for future employability. The biggest challenge for me is organizing the classroom around meeting my students' diverse needs. There are relevant strategies and resources to acquire language proficiency and academic success for a diverse and inclusive classroom, which I will be illustrating. The word diversity in classroom reminds me of different composition of students coming together. These students bring along with them their existing values, beliefs, and assumptions. An institution can embrace this diversity by curating activities that will encourage communication and collaboration among students of multiracial and multicultural origins. For example, ideas and knowledge are created from a heterogeneous team with variation of speech, thoughts, verbal expression, and compelling narratives through teamwork, motivation, and interpretation. Diversity is all about us and about us having the courage to hold each other with empathy, compassion, and togetherness in the world or our classroom. Inclusive classroom. This involves teachers, parents, and the school to ensure that every student is given the opportunity to participate in the lesson activities to increase their academic literacy, numeracy, and social skills. Learning centers are created to process the effective participation of mainstream school systems with students of special needs. In this regard, every student has the right to education based on equality of opportunity. No child is excluded or being discriminated in terms of color, race, sex, religion, language, political or other opinion, national, ethnic, or social origin, disability, birth, poverty, or other status. Every student can learn and benefit from education. Every student feels a sense of belonging and is happy to be in school. The school should adopt and adapt to the needs of students rather than student adapting to the needs of the school. Students' view are taken seriously. The individual differences between students are a source of richness and diversity and should not be a problem. Responding to diversity of needs and development of students can be addressed by a wide and flexible dialogue within the system. Inclusion, education, and activities provide effective pedagogical strategies that focus on changing attitudes and increasing teachers' motivation, self-efficacy, and competences to educate students with special needs, which includes psychosocial and challenging behaviors, slow learners, vulnerable, poor, and needy students. In my diverse and inclusive classroom, I've taken inventory of a continuous process of understanding the variability of student in my class. I remember speaking to one of my students' parents, and we had a good exchange of ideas to motivate student interests in the curriculum studies, but also other activities to draw students from all backgrounds together. This will strengthen and sustain the participation for student teachers, parents, and community in the activities of the school. Restructuring the diversity of students in terms of cultures, policies, and practices by putting different mixes within a group will break barriers on segregation of students who tend to only associate with those they are comfortable with. Teachers and administrative staff of the school will need to be trained and collaborate on providing accessible curriculum, environment, information to support an inclusive curriculum. The understanding by design and differentiated instruction are probable solutions. My intended practice, based upon the centrality of standards where students can draw information and engages their understanding to develop powers of mind, is a good model. There are many other reasons why a diverse and inclusive environment is healthy for learning and teaching to take place. One example is the teacher can be responsible for varied instructional formats, such as providing prior reading on topics before class, having a short mini lecture, facilitate quizzes and games to enable fun and exciting way of learning in class. Many of the lesson activities are using personalized ways of communication using the universal design learning methodology. Learning how to learn with a variety of assessment, collegiality, open-ended activities, multi-learning modes, connection, and different teaching styles. Most important, the challenge is to impact students' civic development through the space they offer students to express their thoughts, beliefs, and experiences. A culture of diversity and inclusion has implications for classroom pedagogies and policies for future development. To move our school structures into more open, fluid, and correspondingly inventive forms, we need new forms, not reform. Based on the work of Heidi Hayes Jacob, she posited her perspectives of the future classroom. I would imagine defining the classroom as an engaging, interactive social space, bringing out conversation, debate, silence, using the manifestation of digital technology, helping students, teachers, parents, and the community to communicate, collaborate, and inform on students' discovery, achievements, connection, and opportunities to enrich in deep learning and overcome fear and barriers to grow. Practically, most school curriculum is organized into courses centered on traditional disciplines. When we need to add courses like sex education, safety and hygiene, financial health, moral education, and business ethics, we find no schedule to fit them. These courses also rarely align to our sacred disciplines. We rather emphasize the growth for advanced placement and international baccalaureate programs. Academic courses override basic integration of the humanities, liberal arts, and social well-being programs. Students are enforced into a grouping patterns with structured curriculum design. In the new version of curriculum, we need to provide students with the ability to communicate effectively with confidence, to work as a team member, to have flexibility, preparedness to face challenges, to identify and solve problems independently, to be able to visualize and conceptualize, having the capacity to learn new things, having the ability to question, challenge, and innovate, capacity for personal responsibility and integrity, self reflection, self management, and self esteem. In the use of space, we need to consider the classroom as shared space, facilitated through personal technology, where learning experience is coordinated by the teacher. Students given personal devices as a context of communication between participants and should be the function for facilitated learning. As a teacher in business education, I bring to my practice beliefs and values that shaped my own experiences in teaching. I remember being taught to obey teacher instructions and follow every lesson plan religiously in school. I was also given assignments and homework to be completed on time and to follow existing schedules and timetable to study for exams and to do well. I fear to fail or attempt to cheat in exams and have always followed the rules. The school has disciplined me to behave in an instructed pattern without questioning why I'm learning what I needed to learn. My perception of curriculum shaped the culture that school is always the right institution to learn and to draw upon my achievement, especially on the Common Core. The current pandemic on COVID-19 has accelerated my school to adopt a virtual classroom using collaborative web conferencing tool with an online whiteboard, breakout rooms, and screen sharing capabilities. For teachers and tutors who want to conduct highly interactive live online teaching sessions. Currently, I'm using Zoom Classroom for all my virtual lesson plans due to home-based learning. I discover getting better at facilitating students' learning with activities using Zoom technology after more than 12 months now. The virtual classroom is helpful to students who cannot attend physical classes. It offers advantage to students who are not in the country. It reduces physical classroom phobia. It offers personalized learning on students' own timing. It offers both student and teacher a worldwide exposure. Students having access to a mobile device can join the class in any remote area or location. It enhances the digital skills and access to anywhere and anytime if the lesson is uploaded on cloud facility. The disadvantage of virtual classroom is that it needs internet connectivity. It requires technological literacy. It has been criticized to support the upper and middle class, and the poorer rural students have no accessibility, and there is a perception that physical interaction will be lost without face-to-face connection. The future classroom will be an open system with virtual and physical infrastructure. In Singapore, the development of information and communication technologies and wide adoption of e-learning platforms in schools and universities has allowed students from isolated location to participate in class activities remotely. The learning spaces uses digital network society. The future classroom is transformed by physical and virtual components to enrich students' psychological experiences while learning, allowing interaction, flexibility, collaboration, and making use of the Internet of Things technologies, and supporting inclusive education. We have seen in Singapore several technology solutions like e-learning platforms, pages.sg apps, augmented reality applications, mobile micro-learning with Nobi, as well as assessment activities with robotic Procto. This discussion brings our dream school to the forum. I envision a school that encapsulates the development of ICTs and e-learning platforms, where tools and technologies for personalized learning virtual and augmented reality, cloud computing, 3D printing, deep learning, and learning analytics support educational activities. The use of new ICT solutions in education allows the learner as a co-designer in the learning process, supporting inclusive education. Interoperability is needed to ensure that e-learning infrastructures, IoT devices, and school management system are successfully integrated into all educational activities, schedules, spaces, and people for the future classroom. Dear friends and members of Curtin Alumni, thank you for listening to my presentation.
Okay. You all have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Melvin. Thanks a lot for that great presentation about diversity and inclusion. So let me check if we have got any questions on the screen. Yeah, it's loading. Yeah, I have got a question based on that, Melvin. Yeah, so since we have got so many university students listening to the stream, so just on behalf of them, I have one question. So, like regarding this diversity and inclusion, like in your experience, what would be the most effective way to encourage them for the university students? Like there were so many methods. Like, what do you think is the most effective to encourage that between the students?
Yes, the most effective encouragement is actually the connectivity of the students to their parents and the institution. That is much lacking in terms of communication between the student, the parents, and the institution itself. You see, when a student enroll in an institution, they are pretty independent. They are either an adolescent taking their own responsibility for the program, or they are instructed by their parents to do so. So the institution needs to investigate those connectivity, how the students want to learn and what the student want to learn. Because ultimately, it's the student's destiny. The student need something where, not the parents, because at adolescence, students are required to make some form of decision. And that decision needs to be communicated with the parents. So I hope students listening to this forum will take this valuable advice to always constantly communicate with your advisor in the institution as well as your parents. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, that's okay. So, we have another question from Lakmal. Shall can you see it in screen or shall I read it out?
Yes, I can see that. Would you think that it would? Yeah. All right. The future classroom is actually a very interesting, development. And many schools, as you know, they are very much in the traditional format. So during the pandemic, we have seen a lot of, I would say, the influx of learning. The e-learning platform has taken dramatically in most learning institutions. For example, India is one country where I work with Amity Global. They have been awarded by the Indian government to even certified an online program. So that is a great development. So many other developing nations that have adopted traditional formats will need to look beyond that. They will need to look at areas of growth. And like what I believe we heard about the automation for businesses, it is a reality now. And most organizations need to know that. Yeah. So developing countries to afford future classroom, although the cost might be there, but you see in terms of education, sometimes you will have fundings from appropriate governmental bodies non-governmental organizations, and volunteer and civic society. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Melvin. I think,
Thank you.
some other questions we can take it at the end, the main Q&A session at the end.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Melvin. Thanks a lot. So yeah, so we'll get moving with our next speaker. So we have got our last speaker for the day. It's Chamila. He's from Curtin, Sri Lanka. Hi, Chamila.
Hi, Hari. How are you? How's everyone doing?
Good afternoon, I think it is. Good afternoon to you, right?
Yes, it's almost 3 p.m. here.
Okay, great. So yeah, let's get started. Let me give a brief introduction to you. So Chamila is working as a consultant project delivery at Innate, Melbourne, Australia, and is the founder partner of 7 Steps Globe Private Limited. He's also supervising the company's projects that are in the areas of technology, software development, and outsourcing. He's involved in building the company image and also looking for new businesses to venture into. He obtained his BSc on computer systems and networking from University of Curtin in 2009. So yeah, you have got these slides ready, Chaman?
Yes, I hope you can see it on your side.
Yes. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, yeah, over to you, Chamila.
All right. Thank you, Hari. Thank you for the awesome or wonderful introduction. Kind of kept me 2 feet higher than what I am. So from that, coming back to my side, I mean, after listening to all the amazing talks that we just went through, I'm just thinking whether mine is going to be good enough for the audience. But then again, it's all about overcoming challenges, right? So I believe that's also a challenge for me. So I'll do my best to inspire some of the audience, at least, who's viewing us from the other side of the screens, somewhere in the world. Okay, so just got this slide in just to give a brief about myself. Forget about what I do or like in terms of work. This is just me. Like most of us, we have different aspects in life. I love sports. I do multiple sports. So play basketball, play table tennis, and I do beach cleanups as a hobby or as something that I can give back to society. I like to have fun. That's me and my brother and my family in a foam bath having a party. So, and I also take challenges. You can see that I'm trying to jump about 30 feet down into the water. So that's just me. So I feel I am always ready to take challenges. And I think for the youngsters who's coming out of uni and moving into adult life, the next challenge would be what you see on the bottom right. That's me and my wife, okay? So challenge of life. So challenges are everywhere. So you'll notice something on those pictures. I am pretty small in size. I'm just 5 feet. So putting my head up in a picture with a basketball team itself is pretty hard to do. But yeah, you can't say no. You have to be with the team, you play with the team, you go with the team. Yeah. So that's me. So moving on, my topic doesn't really have a title because I believe it's our session's title, which I'm trying to adapt and give my point of view or my insights to help someone to make a connection with me and be inspired to move forward. So my first slide is in fact my first job. This was way before I even started uni. I helped out with a person organizing whitewater rafting back in Sri Lanka. And my job was to simply, clean up the boat, make it ready for everyone else. And on the journey, just make sure to help steer the boat around. So that's what I did. So during this time, or this first job that I did, even before I finished school, I think I learned about taking risks. So I was happy with that. I took risks. May not be the ideal for everyone, but that's fine. That's all right. We are all different, and it will be different for each of us. What is my takeaway from this slide? To the audience, what I'll say, try things out of the norm. You don't have to stick to the plan that everyone tells you to stick to. Of course, be obedient with the law and things. But yeah, always try things out of the norm. Moving on, I thought I'll bring up these slides with my career, coming from year to year. So my first paid professional job after finishing school and all that was with a company called Barcode Automations some time back. So that was the first time I learned about how barcodes work. Now you don't even talk about barcodes. You talk about QRs or 3D QRs, which can capture much more information than these barcodes what we had back then. But what did this company teach me, or what did I learn during that time? It was about automating things, because the world was moving into automation. So that company was purely focusing on automating time and attendance in large factories, or currently like production houses for clothing or other manufactured items, and then export. So during this time, I learned that there's a lot out there that I don't know. And then, of course, I learned how to help each other, because my role was just to coordinate between the teams and help each other. Then I moved into the travel industry. So this was fun, because I got to learn about what my own country had to offer. A lot of places that I haven't seen, but I had to read through, learn them. And then, of course, the first challenge came up during that tenure. I had to coordinate with other companies, other businesses, hotels, tour operators, etc. So I started learning my communication skills, and I was open to change, moving from an automation company to a holiday organizer. So it's just something that I like to put forward. Change is going to happen. Be ready for it. Moving on. Then I moved into the content or the media industry. Of course, I was sticking with the IT or technology side of the business, but at the same time, I managed to learn some of the other aspects of the business. That kind of led me to take up a small hobby of photography. So I can take creative photographs. My wife loves it because I take nice photographs of her. Not myself, I'm not that photogenic. So I can do things like that. That may help you in your current job, may have nothing to do with your current job, but at least it can give you some memories when you scroll through those pictures sometime later. So that's something to think about. Let's move on to the next job that I went to. I worked at a telco, this is what we call a call center. So at this company, I learned about outsourcing, communicating globally, working a night shift to a different part of the world. So all that comes into play. I got to learn how you make money in different parts of the world, and why do people outsource. So that is a good point. I think it came up a little while ago as well. It's about collaboration, using different resources from different parts of the world to provide a service to the customers. So there's no, I can do everything by myself anymore. You have to work together. I moved on to a company called E3X. where I learned about SATCOM or satellite communication industry. At this point in time, I got the opportunity to connect with companies like Singtel, Singapore. So I managed to, reach out to some peers who motivated me to achieve something more rather than, staying in a bubble. Because until that time, I haven't really been exposed much to what the world has to offer because I was only working within one country. Then, of course, I moved into the data center industry with Dialog Axiata, which is one of the telco companies in Sri Lanka. So here I had to work with different teams, no choice. I had to reach out to customers, look after their demands, map their processes or map their systems so that I could host those environments in the data center. I think this is where I would say I personally came into the IT side of life after my graduation. So these jobs I did after, sort of like while I was studying and also after my graduation. So if you talk to Lakmal, you'll hear a lot of stories from uni years, because we did the studies while we were working as well. Just like some of you who actually do the same when you move to a different country. It's a really good time and a really good thing to do because you're going to challenge your own time management. How far can you go? How far can you physically work out? You'll challenge all of those things when you work and study at the same time. Within the same company, I, of course, then moved into the telco services side. During this period, I learned something called design thinking, thanks to Axiata Group, who trained us on that concept, which I believe every one of us is using, even though we are not knowing. UI, UX, mobile experience, and customer experience, or like how you run through scenarios, Q&A on different services that you're planning to provide, the websites that you create, all that is coming under that same umbrella where you use design thinking to think from the side of a customer before you put your services out to the market. So that's an interesting subject to read and find some details about. Finally, moving on from there, it brings me to my current company that I work with. That is with Innate. We are a construction software provider. The pandemic struck the construction industry quite hard. Logistics definitely was a big hit. And of course, then the restrictions here in Australia, a lot of lockdowns, especially Victoria and New South Wales, even put restrictions on people working on construction sites. So you had to reduce the amount of physical presence, find ways to communicate effectively, efficiently, which brought in new challenges for the softwares that we were already providing. But then again, that's a good thing, right? It's a challenge. It's made us stretch the boundaries that we were used to. Completely went paperless. The industry itself almost going paperless. Starting from the design drawings, the plans, the conceptualization of a project, seeking contracts, getting the contracts signed digitally. From there, moving on to the actual production itself, except for the physical manpower and the raw materials that you use on a construction site. Everything went digital. So you see, all of these phases in my time or my life had given me different challenges. So there's got to be something very common, right? We have challenges. There's no way to avoid it. So just like in my introduction, there was a mentioning of a founder partner of 7 Steps Global. Yes, it's not in the slides because that's an ongoing journey, which we started long ago because we were searching, or we were trying to push our limits while we were working. Try doing something more. Where else can we go? All right, without taking much time, let me move on. So challenges, it's going to be there for every one of us. But the thing is, challenges are different for each of us. So I'll give you a challenge. Find out what's common in the next few slides. Let's talk about it at the end. We need to identify what our challenges are. So different people, different parts of the world will have different challenges. Global challenges could be your food, health, shelter. There's very little some of these people can do to overcome that, but challenge is there. Then, of course, the most common challenge is that us, this audience who's having access to digital environments, who's connected with organizations such as Curtin, who's able to kind of live above those basic needs, I would say. We have stress, we have more emotional issues, we have all the work stress that comes from us, family stress, moodiness, and now, of course, everyday topic, the pandemic, COVID. I don't want to talk about it, so since we are all talking about it, so there's going to be a variety of challenges that we go through. Because of that, we need to identify what our challenges are so that we can make use of that information to find out what matters to us. Then we can prioritize what matters to us so that we can focus or put our focus to achieve those things what matters to us. Because the world is not perfect. We can't find everything to be perfect. We can't expect everything to be perfect. But of course, we can still keep moving. Right. So here's an easy way to overcome those daily challenges, negativities that comes through. What's your age right now? Add 10 years to that and think whether it matters in that time. If it's not, maybe it's not worth holding on to. So some challenges, if it's giving you negativity, might as well let it go. Second question, where are you heading? Find out where you want to go. That would be your goal. There's no ultimate goal. Growing old is not a goal because every one of us is growing old. So what we do today, or if we do not do something today, doesn't matter. We will still grow old. So growing old is not a goal. So make sure you find out what your goals are and where you're heading. So challenges will always try to push us down. But if we give in to those challenges, that's when things start falling down. So when you build yourself to become bigger than your challenges, or sort of so that you can look at those challenges and evaluate them, that's when you are able to move forward with those. Right. So I was telling everyone gets challenges. So I'll take a quote from Winston Churchill. He says, pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, and optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. So this comes to think every challenge is an opportunity. It's definitely true. But we need to be able to look at it from that view. Some people from the past, or some inspiration from the past. Walt Disney here. He was going through childhood bullying, coming from a poor background, poverty. His teachers laughed at his drawings or his arts, but see where he went to. If your dream is really big, you can really achieve it. Oprah Winfrey. Once again, someone who's been heavily abused during the childhood, coming from a poor background originally, but I've got a quote there, and see what they put forward to. Whatever your situation, try to bring the goodness in yourself and your intentions, so that you try to be good for someone else. That will, in fact, build you better and above everyone, so that you can easily overcome challenges. Right. So Abraham Lincoln. So a nice quote from him. So you don't have to really worry where you're coming from. Where you're going is what matters. So use those challenges to improve yourself. Challenges will put you through a couple of tests. It'll test your persistence, it'll test your patience, because nothing is achieved overnight. You need to keep going at it. Right. When do challenges become opportunities? That is when you are prepared. So for those who are ready to go for interviews and take up those first jobs, second job, here's some of the points that are picked up that are highlighted as important to be prepared. Most demanding skills are actually soft skills. Of course, your hard skills are required, your coding skills, your technology skills, all that is necessary. But creativity, persuasion, collaboration, adaptability, time management. Time management might not be a best word to use, but it's how we prioritize our activities within the time. Then, of course, we get some of the others from the Economic Forum. That is problem solving, critical thinking. Again, creativity is highlighted. People management, of course, that's when you want to work with teams, you need those skills. Things to think about. Don't get fixated, stuck on what you know. Be open to others' ideas. Emotional intelligence. Of course, I think I'm almost hitting my time. But yeah, emotional intelligence is definitely needed, because that will help you stay strong whenever the challenges hit you. So a couple of quick tips for us to build that emotional intelligence and move ahead in life, overcoming the challenges. Seek help. It's perfectly all right. Reach out to those who have achieved, who is where you want to go to. Reach out to them, talk to them, find out how did they get there. It's always easy to learn by experience, but experience takes time. So it's fine to learn from those who have done it. Remember, there's a saying, you are the product of the 5 people you are most closely associating with. So be aware of your surrounding. Who are you associating? Are they those achievers who are overcoming challenges? Or are they those who are giving into challenges and just laying low? Pick your influence like that. Read daily, because that's going to give you your focus. Focus to go to those goals, and also a time for yourself. You will eventually start reading like 20-30 minutes a day, good enough. Morning with a cup of coffee, you will start to hear the birds singing. You will start to hear the noises from the neighborhood. That's when you know you are centered, you are focused on that moment. It is a great experience. You will feel so relaxed, and if you do this in the morning, you'll be so energized and ready to hit the day. Okay, I'm trying to go through all of this. There's nothing as impossible, nothing as I can't. The Wright brothers built more than 100 or so prototypes before any of them eventually flew. Thomas Edison says he's done more than 1,000 bulbs before his actual bulb that he produced and patented. So there's nothing as impossible. There's nothing as I can't do. All right. Who do we see? Who do we hear the most? We don't see ourselves daily, but everyone else sees us. But when we talk to the outside, we hear ourselves the first, because your voice is loudly heard by yourself before it is heard by everyone else. So be positive at yourself. Always motivate yourself, talk to yourself. Yes, I can. A good example, smile at yourself in the morning, and you can see this kid having all the posties about the positives that they can take on a daily basis. It's a nice thing. I think you might have heard me saying the word daily or in the morning like that. Why? Motivation is very temporary. Somebody else has to give it to you. But when you make that a habit within yourself, you can go on that long journey. Life is long, it's not going to be easy. Just like brushing your teeth, you can't just do it one day and forget about it. Your teeth are not going to be white. You do it every day consistently so that it becomes a habit, and you'll have nice white teeth to put a smile on your face and walk out that door. Right. Avoid distractions. Give a time for it. Even your social media, reduce the notifications. Perfectly all right, because you are more important. I know we are not traveling to work anymore. It's not the time to waste on social media, but use that time to get some inspiration for yourself, learn something new, or even spend that time with your family. Far better. Okay, the best example I can leave you with is a child. A child has to walk someday. Every time they fall, every obstacle they see is a challenge for them. But if they say, no, walking is too dangerous, I can't do it anymore, I'm going to stop, that won't work, right? We all have to keep moving. The child will fall, but he is determined to walk, even before somebody else is telling them or asking them to stand up and walk. Because you keep going at it, eventually you'll walk. So learn from a child's mind. Learn how a child looks at the world. Invest in yourself, because that's your greatest asset. You are what you become. Whatever everybody else says, the positivity, the challenges, everything happens to us. The positivity is needed to overcome those challenges. It is not easy. It is going to be very hard. It is consuming a lot of energy. So that is why you need constant training. Those habits will help you to overcome those challenges going forward. Now, since everybody is ready, you will start seeing all the opportunities above those challenges. Finally, I'll end with this. Believe in yourself, you can do it. And I'm quoting two of my favorite, my school badge there. It had a motto saying Respice Finem, which means look to the end. Have your focus on the goal. Your obstacles don't matter. Of course, Nike, everyone knows. Just do it. Don't procrastinate. Take the first step. Go forward. With that, I am ending my presentation. I hope everyone is energized. All the best. Do your best. You are the best. Back to our wonderful host, Hari. Right.
Yeah, thank you, Chamila. Thank you for those motivation speech. So that was really good, and like that shows you have taken so many challenges in different roles in multiple organizations. Thanks a lot for that.
That's true, Hari. I guess that's something which I learned. Well, I didn't plan for it; it just happened. But something that I realized is a lot of us, when we finish school, we don't know what we really want to do. So we try to do everything, and eventually we will come to that point and realize, okay, this is something I like. Let me do this. Then you can grab onto that. But don't ever limit yourself. You know, if your teacher says, no, you should be an engineer, your parents say you should be a doctor, that's good. That's good motivation. They're trying to bring the best in you, but don't limit yourself. That's the whole point.
I think all the youngsters here will get this as a teaching. Yeah, this kind of really is a kind of wisdom for everyone. So especially for the youngsters and university students who are in the webinar. Yeah. So yeah, I think we are well on time. So without further delay, we'll get into the Q&A. So yeah, Janik. So shall we go ahead with the Q&A, Jan?
Yeah. Hello. So we'll proceed with the Q&A. So
yeah, let me.
we'll add all the speakers here. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Okay. So starting on with Andy, we have some questions. So we'll raise them here.
Okay. I want to respond to the question from Uttara and Hirantika. The first from Uttara Bayu Samudra. Yeah. In terms of ways to counter terrorism outside of the policy aspect, actually, I have mentioned two of them earlier before about increasing the role of local governments and also boosting parental supervision on their children. It is important to the public to raise their awareness on this issue. Several local governments in the Europe has been raising their community supervision and also early detection. Related to the role of the parents to fight this issue, I think there are guidelines you can access at familiesforlife.org.uk, as I mentioned before. Some of them about having conversation with children about what they see on the television or on the internet, and then parents should be aware when a significant change in their attitude when they're hiding their phones, deleted message, and other. Yeah, I think family has strategic position to ban this issue, this terrorism issue, on the first place. And to the second questions from Hirantika about could a government influence social media provider to remove their regulation on terrorism, especially in Afghanistan? It is an interesting question, but I want to recall my first answer to Hirantika question when she said about Facebook has preventive measure. And Saban in 2015 stated that even though Facebook has addressed the issue of propaganda crimes, other social media such as Twitter still permit that account of ISIS member to disseminate terrorist propaganda and endorse related crimes. If only a tiny percentage of their followers are turned, there is still many new acts of terrorism that would not otherwise have occurred. We know that there are many social media. If only Facebook did these preventive measures, I think that would not be optimal. In 2017, considering the large number of used Telegram for terrorism, the Indonesian government has blocked Telegram because tens of thousands of pages containing terrorism materials were found on various Telegram channels. We know that Telegram is strongly encrypted and oriented towards user privacy. After that, if we can see at the news, the founder of Telegram came to Indonesia and lobbied the government of Indonesia. From this incident, it may be possible to answer the question of government influence to provider media social. In business term, maybe Abdul will give explanation. We understand about bargaining power. When a person has a bargaining power, he could force someone to do something. Indonesia, with its large population and wide internet user, I think is a promising market of any business, including social media. So Indonesia has the bargaining power to force Telegram to modify some Telegram's policy as the security interest of Indonesia. Now, the question from Hirantika regarding that the Taliban, which now controls Afghanistan, perhaps one question arises: how well Taliban position to make deals with social media providers? If they have good bargaining power, of course, social media entities can negotiate it with them. But I think apart from that, of course, in this issue of terrorism, international regulation is needed, which is rules all social media providers, just like environmental issue and or human rights and others. More important is, I think, the commitment to jointly create a safe and peaceful world for us and our children. Maybe that all my responses to those questions, Janet. Thank you.
Yeah. Next, we have a question for Helen. Yeah, I'll put that down. Yeah, Helen, we have a question from Ginas.
Oh yes, thank you. So yeah, Gimantha asked a question about batteries. So what's the form of batteries considered for energy storage, lithium-based, etc., or any other energy storage medium used in NTPT as part of today? First of all, we do have a device technology laboratory, and they do look at some next generation battery technologies, including lithium air secondary batteries and biodegradable batteries. But in our laboratory, the Space, Environment and Energy Laboratory, we're mainly interested in how we can utilize existing energy storage technologies more efficiently. So since NTT was formerly a telecommunications company, we're specialized in energy, well, not in energy, in network technologies. So we have an energy network technology group, and they're looking at smart energy network technologies. And these technologies optimize how we time the charging and discharging of batteries more efficiently to respond flexibly to changes in supply and demand in energy. So one of the major problems with renewable energy is it's very hard to maintain a constant supply, as with like other kind of thermal energies. So yeah, we need flexible battery and network utilization. So that's one of the major focuses of the Energy Network Technology Group. And I think he also asked about solar panels and whether we consider solar panels because of the hardware materials used. So again, I'm not an energy specialist, but I'll just respond to this like briefly. So yeah, we're not developing solar panels themselves, but we do have as part of the energy project, we're looking at space power generation, which could be considered a potentially more efficient way of utilizing solar panels. So space power generation using solar panels would mean you would have the panels up in orbit above Earth, and this would give the potential to provide 24-hour power regardless of the weather conditions. And we're also looking at wireless power transmission technologies to go with this. So that would be a method of sending any power captured up in space back to Earth.
Thank you, Helen. Yeah. So I think we have another question for Abdul. So yeah, that's again from Hirantika. You can see the question.
Yeah, okay, I can see the question.
1 moment. During the pandemic. Oh, this is.
Oh, this is for me?
Okay.
Yeah, that's for Abdul.
Yeah. Okay. Well, interesting question. Do people invest money more in banks or not? Well, it depends what you mean by investments. I mean, if you're talking about short-term investments, you're talking about fixed deposits and stuff. Generally, with the current interest rate environment, it's not been the most exciting of investment tools. But having said that, banks, like I said earlier, banks sometimes offer products and services from an investment perspective directly, and sometimes indirectly, because we have fund management companies which actually manage funds and equities, and we distribute them as banks to our customers. So indirectly, if you ask me, the answer is the same. Whether it's banks or other financial institutions, it's pretty much the same thing. Really, the question is whether you want to invest and what sort of return you want to get, and that really comes down to your risk profile, right? So if you have a short-term interest, then we maybe want to go into higher risk products, but you need to be ready for those things. I mean, these fundamentals in terms of understanding your risk profile, what sort of investments you want to take, what sort of time and tenor that you have in terms of realizing your investments. These are critical things. But generally, if you want to go into a long, steady, solid, dependable type of and trustable organizations, typically banks, people tend to stay with banks. Because we have the overall portfolio of services and we can cover you in many, many ways. So yes, I mean, people invest. I mean, it really depends on what kind of return you want.
Yeah, okay, right. So thank you, Abdul. And yeah, so a question to Melvin.
Okay, the effectiveness of online classes. Yeah. So as I know that the MOOC, the Mass Online Open Courses, are getting very popular with short courses, short programs. So online classes are here to stay. Hence, in terms of the effectiveness, they are still improving the quality of online program. I know some online program, they're getting more and more interactive because with the advent of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and augmented reality, you can make this program virtually exciting. But however, I have not seen so much. I've taken many of the MOOC program myself, and there are very good professors from Harvard, from Cambridge, from MIT, and from Stanford University. They are fantastic, but online delivery might not suit them. Not every teacher can do online program. And therefore, it has to be a combination of certain kind of talents you need to have. Knowledge is one thing, delivery is another. So I'm still exploring on this online program. And it is a very wonderful question. The effectiveness of online classes, there are research that has been done on this, but as you know, the research are pretty outdated. Yeah. One good example is to see the UO people, the University of the People. So now they have about 100,000 students taking their program. So you can search for that. You can see whether they are effective. I think they are effective because they start with a few thousand. And what their mission is to give those students who has no opportunity to go to a higher education, because their tuition, their rate of fees is only 4,200, I think. And that's everything for the whole cost, 3-year program or even a master's program. So they make it affordable to everybody. So now education is accessible. Yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you, Melvin. Thank you. And we have a question to Chamila.
Okay. Professional, how can they enjoy his or her duty getting high productivity? For me, I think that is how you manage your time or how you prioritize your time. If you prioritize your work let's say if you're working from 9 to 11 at one stretch, focus on that. Put your phone on silent if you're not supposed to receive work related calls. But you can, I think most of the phones will let you, maybe your family, if in an emergency they can dial, that will ring, but everything else you can put down silent. You don't need to check your social media. That's not going to pay your bills, right? So if you focus on what you're doing at that time, the broader concept I think is called mindfulness, but not going to that level, but it's around having that focus. If you have that focus, you can achieve more during that short period of time. So usually achieving more in a short period of time is what we look for as productivity. So that'll let you be more productive in that time. And do the same thing when you go home as well. Don't think about your work. Don't plan your work while you're talking in the dinner table, while you're having a chat with your wife. So, put that focus for that, or prioritize what you should be doing at that time during that time. That'll help you become very productive during, or especially in your career, as well as let you balance your life. This is a personal opinion from my side. So I think that might be the main thing. And of course, I may not have known some of the tasks that I was assigned with when I went for the job, but I always had sort of a tenacity that I'll at least read myself, I'll find the solution. I did not let the task scare me. So that is something which allowed me to get into sort of different types of jobs during my career. And keep learning. Everything is teaching you. Don't get fixated on things. That's it.
Okay, that's nice. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the closing remarks now. Haren?
Yeah. So I think like it's time for us to wrap up the webinar. I think there are a couple of other questions as well, but unfortunately, yeah, we're almost on time, and yeah, we will have to wrap up the event. So yeah, that brings us to the end of this webinar. And I would like to thank all the speakers, so Andy, Abdul, Melvin, Helen, and Chamila. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for those sessions, and it was really insightful for everyone and the speakers. So thank you all who have shared their experiences on various topics and especially committing to this event. Also, on behalf of the Curtin Alumni, Indonesia, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, Singapore, Hong Kong, we would like to thank all guest speakers, moderators, and participants for joining us today. Please stay safe and stay healthy. So yeah, and we have got a small clip. If you enjoy that, we'll end with that. So with that, so until next time, goodbye everyone. Thanks.
Bye everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right. So, okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a great weekend.
See you everyone. Bye.